Hi everyone, this is Terry with Futures.io. It is my pleasure to welcome back Brett Barrett for today's webinar, a sneak peek at NinjaTrader 8 Orderflow Tool Suite. Now please feel free to type your questions into the questions box during the event and we'll do our best to answer them at the end. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do us a favor and give us a thumbs up if you enjoy the webinar. And as always, please feel free to share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us a lot. For trading news, events, and information, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter using @Futures.io. And without further delay, I will hand it over to Brett, and you should get the pop-up to share your screen.
Okay, should be showing my screen here, guys. Just make sure you got it, Terry.
Yep, looking good.
All right, cool. Appreciate it. Welcome. Glad to be back into the Futures.io webinar room. Always a pleasure to be in the room today with you guys. Today we've got a little sneak peek of some new feature set we've been working on for the past couple of months, and it's an Orderflow Plus tool set, which I want to run through with you guys and just give you a preview of some new features coming in the product. And then we'll kind of rip through some of those analysis techniques that we've integrated into this tool set and get right into it. And before I get into the new tools that are coming in, I do have a couple disclaimers to get out of the way, which I'll go ahead and throw on the PowerPoint description here, which is the risk of loss in trading can be substantial, regardless whether it's in securities, futures, contracts, or foreign exchanges. You should therefore carefully consider whether such trading is suitable for you in light of your circumstances and financial resources. You may sustain a total loss of the funds that you deposit with your broker to establish or maintain a position in the commodity, future, or foreign exchange market. And you may incur losses beyond these amounts. You can learn more about these risks by inquiring with your brokers directly. And finally, this presentation is brought to you by NinjaTrader LLC, software development company which owns and supports the NinjaTrader trading platform. And without further ado, let's get into the Orderflow Plus toolset. So we have been working on our next NinjaTrader 8 release. Typically, we've been releasing NinjaTrader 8 versions about every month for the last, it's probably been about last year or so. We've been releasing new NinjaTrader 8 versions, iterating on the product, adding new functionality, fixing bugs, and adding stability. And we got to the point to where we've been able to start working on some new feature set in the product. And one of the things we wanted to focus on is Orderflow Plus and Orderflow tools. And the reason we wanted to focus on this is that when we look at the competitive landscape with our competitors in platform options that customers have when trying to choose a platform to trade with, Orderflow seems to now be something that's a base feature of platforms. It's another view, another popular way that's just exploded with popularity recently in the last few years, and it's really become a cornerstone of a trader's analysis. And so what we've done is we've analyzed what kind of order flow type technologies might be in use for the trader and broke it down into a number of indicators, a new bar type, and a drawing tool, which we have still in development. And so to work you through the list on the NinjaTrader 8 new functionality we're adding, for those of you that maybe this is your first NinjaTrader 8 webinar, this webinar is going to be focusing more on our Orderflow Plus tool. So we're going to be focusing on the new features and functionality coming into the product. We'll be spending less time on what NinjaTrader 8 actually does out of the box today. So if you're curious about NinjaTrader 8 in general, I would urge you to check out our website. We've got tons of webinars, YouTube videos, recordings on getting up to speed for new users into the product. And for those of you that are using NinjaTrader 8 today or have used NinjaTrader 8 and are interested in learning more about the new features coming up, that's what I'm going to be focusing in today's webinar. And we've got the volumetric bars as our first bullet point here, and I'll be ripping through all of these here in the webinar except for the last two. And volumetric bar, you can see this in the top right-hand screen, and I'll be jumping into this into our next slide coming up. And we've got our market depth map. We've got a large trade detector indicator, a cumulative delta indicator, a VWAP indicator, a volume profile indicator, which I don't have anything to show you today since we're still in development right now. All the items above, we've been through our initial development pass, and we've got it to a point to where we feel comfortable to show it in a preview in today's webinar. We're still doing quality assurance on that, of course, though, and we've got our volume profile drawing tool, which is still in development. And these tool set will be available in the lifetime license with purchase of an NinjaTrader lifetime license. And all existing lifetime license will immediately receive this tool set. So moving into the next slide here, again, I mentioned this previously, but we are doing a little bit different style with this new feature release. We're going to do it in a preview format, and what that means is that we're going to release these tool sets in two bunches. We've got the first bunch first batch that we're going to put out near the end of this month, which will have these 5 tools here: volumetric bars, depth map, large trade detector, cumulative delta, VWAP. Our next release we will be adding the volume profile indicator and drawing tool set. And the reason we're kind of releasing this in batches and in preview is that this is our first foray into order depth, order flow. We've done our homework. We've got a tool set here that will display order flow data in NinjaTrader, but we're open to community feedback on this, and we want to get this feature set dialed in. So we're doing a preview release on this. It's kind of the first time we've done a preview release. We'll see how it goes, and we're hoping to engage more with the community and get some feedback and make any quality of life changes or new feature adds to this that we need to do to get this in a state where it's just a very useful tool. So we are going to be doing that in a preview release. And in that preview release, we're going to have something called volumetric bars. And volumetric bars, it's a new bar type inside of NinjaTrader. It's similar to if you want to say you want to have a 1-minute chart or a 5-minute chart. Well, now you're going to have the ability to select a volumetric chart. And with a volumetric chart, you'll choose your base data series, and it's built with tick data. So we need access to the tick data, since with any of these order flow tool sets, typically you're going to need the tick data, since we're doing some analysis on that tick data to classify them into buy and sell volume. And the volumetric bars have 2 modes for classification. There's a bid-ask mode, which is the default mode, and it requires that your provider supports bid-ask stamped tick data. And so what that is and a lot of providers have this, for example, IQFeed, Kinetic, CQG, Continuum, just to name a few off the top of my head. They all have what's called bid-ask stamped tick data. And this means that with every tick that we download from the provider, it's got an associated bid-ask price associated with it, which is the current bid-ask price at the time the trade executed. And with that little bit of metadata, it allows us to classify these trades based on if they occurred on the bid or the ask price. And if you don't have access to that data, we do have another mode for classification. It's called the up-down mode. And you can switch to that mode, and it just, if you have a down tick or an up tick, it just counts it as a buy or sell. And so you have both classification modes available. And there's multiple display modes and customization modes. I've got a few of those in the bottom right here, where I've got the bid-ask bar, delta bar, imbalance bar, dominant side only, and mixed. And what I'll do is I'll pop into the platform here and just take a look at them. And we've got the ability, and why don't we do that? And I'll come back, since I'll come back to these last 2 bullets. So let me go into the NinjaTrader platform here, where I've prepared some charts for today's webinar. And so here I've got a 5-minute bid-ask volumetric chart. And I've done that by opening a new chart where you get the data series window. And on type, where you're selecting the type of chart you want to do, you've got your standard selections. And here I've selected volumetric. And here you now parameterize what you want it to be. So I've got 5-minute volumetric chart here. Here's the delta type, bid-ask, up, down tick, which is what I was describing earlier. Got two additional properties here, ticks per level and size filter, which I'll talk a little bit more in the future here. And then as you scroll down, you've got a bunch of properties here for customizing the display. And if I cancel out of here, let's take a minute and just kind of take a look and say, what are we looking at here? What is a volumetric chart, and what are all these numbers, and what am I seeing? For those of you familiar with any kind of delta type analysis techniques, this will be old news to you. For some of you that maybe have not been exposed to using bid and ask analysis, whether the trade occurred on the buy or on the sell, this is going to be very new to you, and there's going to be a lot of data on this chart and not sure how to read this chart. And so let's go back to the slides here, and let's go down to prepared a slide called the Volumetric Analysis Concepts. And so let's take a minute to break down one of these bars and just describe what you're seeing in these bars. And a little bit of a theory to get started with, which is in the market auction theory process, it dictates that for any single trade to execute, one of the following must occur. And you either have to have a market participant, a trader, wanting to buy. They must pay the standing ask price, or a market participant wanting to sell must pay the standing bid price. So you got two guys want to sell, you got one guy that wants to buy something. You've got a market with a bid and an offer. That person has to wait for the offer to come to him and whatever price he's willing to buy at, or that person must hit the offer and must pay the price of what's on offer. And you can think about that in terms of order types in some cases. For example, if you think of a buy market order or sell market order, when you place a buy market order, you say, I don't care what the price is, just give it to me. And in which case, whatever the offer is, that's what you're going to get. And so in that case, you are paying the standing bid price. Vice versa with a sell market order. And this in principle is called the aggressor concept, where you can have more aggressive buyer and sellers at any particular time frame. So somebody that's called an aggressor or aggressive buying or selling, in this context means somebody that was willing to meet the offer price. And that's when you have that happen, that's seen as a trade occurring at the offer price, and vice versa on the sell side. And what the volumetric bars do here is they gain you some insight and visibility into finding these aggressive buyers and sellers. The idea being that if you have more aggressive buyers, maybe that's an indication of support. If you have more aggressive sellers, maybe that's an indication of a resistance level. And volumetric bars on their own typically are not used for signal generation. And it's just another view into the market. It's another way to look at the market. Think of it think of it similar to the concept of candlestick charts, for example. With candlestick charts, they've been around for ages, since the dawn of electronic trading time. And you can pull up a basic candlestick chart, and there's multiple ways to read that chart. You're just looking at the pure open, high, low, and close data of the market. And you can read that. You can use candle type analysis, candle pattern analysis. This is a bull flag, this is a bear flag. This is a head and shoulders formation. There's multiple ways to analyze that candlestick chart. And so what these volumetric charts can be likened to is that of just the pure data that you would see in a candlestick chart. You can now interpret this data in a volumetric chart as well in a order flow methodology. And so when I'm looking at my screenshot over here, and let's focus on the bid ask side here. So we've got two columns of data here, and we've got a candlestick. And the candle is similar to your candle. It's the open and close price. The box extends to the high and low that occurred during that candlestick. And then we've got it broken down into volume that occurred on the bid on the left side and volume that occurred on the ask in the right side. And you'll notice that there is shading in the background, and the shading in the background is shaded based on the difference in how much trading occurred on the ask versus how much trading occurred at the bid at that price level. And that can be called the delta, which you'll see on the right-hand side here. So I've got 778 trades occurred on the offer at this price, and 94 trades occurred at the bid at this price. And so if we take 778 minus 94, that gets us 684. And this is our delta difference here. And so we've got multiple ways of looking at a bar. We've got several kind of, we call them chart styles, and I'll kind of rip you through a few of those options available to you. You can kind of condense this data down so you don't look at so much data. Maybe it's overwhelming to you. You can also add more data as well. And so an example of adding more data is we've got these yellow text here, which is the maximum or the maximum size seen at a particular bid or ask level. And so multiple ways of looking at the data. And so let's open up our volumetric chart here. So now that I've kind of run through a little bit of the basics of what you're seeing here, if I look at the chart, this is the chart forming for today, end of the session for ES here. And I'll immediately be drawn to this area up here where we've got a lot of buy volume here. And I say a lot of buy volume because there's a lot of size here that's occurred on the offer at this price point. And so what we do is we shade it more aggressively as those numbers get higher. And we do this per session on volumetric bars. So each session will have a max color shade or min color shade. And it really works to draw your eye in to specific potential. And there's, again, multiple ways to read these charts. You can view them as high volume areas. You can view them as support or resistance areas. And again, typically just used as a way, just another way to look at what happened at that price point. And we have the bid-ask mode here, which is default. And I've got a bunch of tabs down here where we've got a delta mode where we compress in the numbers on the bid and ask side and just show instead just a single value. Just you can fit a little more bars on your chart if you want this way. So it just kind of condenses the data down if you want to look at a little more data. One of the implications of these type of volumetric bars is that it's just harder to get more data on the chart. As you see, as I compress the chart up, you'll see that the actual text gets smaller and smaller and smaller to where you really can't read it. And so there are ways you can actually turn off the text and just trade off the shading. That's definitely a valid way to do it. But typically you're going to have a smaller number of bars on these charts if you want to actually look at the data that occurred. Moving on over to the delta side, I've covered this side. We've got an imbalance mode, which I'm going to skip over for now, but let me just click it here. And my next slide, I actually run through what the imbalance mode does and why we've included it in the product. We've got larger time frame ability. We've got one option that I did skip over, which if I double click on this to get to my options here, a number of options on parameterizing this. One is called ticks per level and another is called size filter. And so here what I've done is this value is by default 1. And if I have this set to 1, then the chart will actually be hard to see all the price levels. If I have it set to, let's say, a higher value, what it does is compress and add. Now each one of these rows are 8 price levels. So it's a way to just compress the data in the chart. So that way I can view a larger time frame and aggregate this data to do a more longer time frame view on it. So that's what the ticks per level feature is used for. We've also got a way to shade the dominant side only. So if you want to focus on the shading, instead of shading it on aggregate based on its delta, you can shade it individually based on trades occurring at the bid or the offer. So we do offer this mode as well. And then the other thing we've implemented on our last tab here, typically you can see all the data, you can see the breakdown of order flow analysis in each volumetric bar, but you may also have some metadata about what happened during the bar that you want to see on the chart as well. And we call this bar statistics on the bottom. If I double click on this chart, go down here, keep scrolling down, down, down. And there's this property here called show bar statistics. And if I uncheck it and check it, I get various number of bar statistics that are available to turn on or off and set some colors on, etc. And here I've got the default number set up here, where you can see in each bar, how many trades occurred on each bar, how much volume occurred on each bar, how much of that volume was on the buy side or the sell side. We've got the delta of that single bar. We've got it in percentage mode, and we've got cumulative delta as well. Now, cumulative delta being the delta across the entire session, and then the min delta and max delta of the bar. These are all shaded based on their relative sizes as well, same as you would expect on the volumetric bars. And bar statistics, totally optional. You turn them on if you want to get access to that data, or leave them off. And so on these volumetric bars, we've done a lot of work to try to make them as performant as possible. You're able to load these charts without turning on a feature called tick replay we've had. So it just uses the underlying tick data. And so we're pretty happy with our implementation here. So we're excited to get it out into the fields and see what you guys have to say and see what feedback you guys have for us. There's numerous other properties which I won't get too far deep into now. We've got things like strength sensitivity. You can turn off the imbalance mode or dominant side modes only. You've got customization based on colors and things like that. So there's quite a few things that you can get in and customize per market that you're interested in. And so one of the things that I skipped over on volumetric bars is the imbalance mode. So let me pop over to the imbalance mode here. And let me head on over to my next slide, which is the volumetric imbalance analysis. So I'm going to rip through a quick Imbalance 101, again, for those of you that have done order flow stuff in the past, this is old hat. For those of you that are new to this, what we're doing here is we're comparing so if I look at my imbalance bar here in the screenshot, I've got a purple 408 here. And what that comparison is and why that's purple and why that's significant is we are comparing the 408 value on the left side with the 125 value on the top right-hand side. And the reason we're doing this, and why we're doing this comparison, is that this is the true offer at this time, and this was the true bid at this time. So what we're doing is comparing while the offer and bid was at these two prices at this time, compare the volume that occurred on the bid versus the volume that occurred on the offer. And based on if that volume was 1.5 times greater than its subsequent volume, then we'll go ahead and shade it. And if it's greater on the offer side, we'll shade it the red, and greater on the, on the bid side, we'll shade it the red. And if it's greater on the offer side, we'll shade it this cyan color. Of course, customizable to fit your needs. And the value of which we consider something to be at imbalance is customizable. The default is 1.5 times. You may need to change that depending on the market you trade. And the idea behind imbalance is that as soon as you detect an imbalance being a significant area where, and specifies where either sellers dominated or buyers dominated at a specific battle point. And when I say battle point, I mean, whenever you have a bid and an offer and they're duking it out, whether the price should go higher or lower, and trades are occurring on the bid and the offer, that is a area where either the buyers will dominate or the sellers will dominate. And typically order flow action will follow based on that, who wins that battle point. And so the imbalance works to try to highlight those victory points or who won in those cases. And when we show the imbalance, and again, the imbalance, it does matter if this is for a real-time forming bar or an historical forming bar. Historical forming bars, when the bar is closed, these values are set in stone. They won't change. What you will see on a real-time bar, for example, is you will see these imbalance modes. These imbalances may be there and then may go away as more trading occurs during the bar. For example, if this bar was trading at its lows here, and you can see here it's got 29 here on the bid that traded and 480 on the offer that traded. And this, in this case, in the very end of this bar, if this bar was still forming, then it could be that this trading comes back down. We get more trades occurring on this bid price of 29 here. As soon as we get more trades occurring, then this imbalance may no longer be true, and the cyan color will go away. So that is one thing you got to watch out for, is that whenever the bar is closed, then these imbalance levels are set in stone. When the bar is forming, then it can change. And so on the imbalance side, let's see, let's head over to the chart on the imbalance side. So again, you're looking for some significant values that might be important to you on the imbalance charts. These do take some tweaking in the market to market. If I double click here, go down to imbalance ratio property here, it is set to that 1.5 default. There's also a minimum delta we would need to see before we have an imbalance. And you may need to customize those settings based on the market you trade. And once you dial it in to the settings that you're looking for, you then could use these imbalance levels as potential support or resistance zones. And again, there's multiple ways to read the data as to whether or not you view an imbalance as a support level or as a resistance level. That's a little bit outside the scope of the webinar that I'm doing today, but we do give you the tools to define those criteria and show them on the chart. So that is the imbalance mode. And another thing that we've done is we've set up the parameters in a way. So if I switch to the imbalance plus bid-ask chart here, what I've done is I actually have both modes here, where I've turned on the imbalance markers, and I also have the traditional bid-ask analysis, which is done on a single price level type methodology. And so I actually have both modes here. So I'm seeing big imbalances, and I'm also seeing the traditional bid-ask analysis. So that's actually my favorite way to do it. So you can actually combine both. You're not forced to have two separate charts to show imbalances. So that's kind of one interesting thing you can do. Okay, so that's volumetric bars. So I wanted to run you through some of the things that we've done on the volumetric bars. We hope you find that they're useful in the next NinjaTrader 8 coming up. Moving on to the next thing we've done is something called our market depth map. So let me head on over to my next slide here. And so the market depth map, what this is it's an indicator you apply to your chart. Data is plotted on the chart in real time. So think of this data as, for those of you that have used the product and have used the Superdome, the Superdome has a set of market depth on it. And the market depth map is an indicator that visually plots that data on the chart. And it gives you a way to look at historical values. So you don't have to have memory. I mean, there really is no way to have memory as to what happened in the past on the level 2 data. And the level 2 data is it's just data that the exchange publishes. And any data that's available, you've got price data, which is on market data, you've got depth data. Any data used from the exchange could be useful in some analysis. And so what market depth does is try to plot that data historically and allows the trader to try to see some potential support or resistance levels based on market depth or order sizes. And also you can use this data to look for patterns, things like potential automated trading system behavior. And I've got two screenshots on the right here. One on top here, I've drawn an arrow here to where On this large green bar here, you can see we actually get some significant volume at this price point here on the depth map. And we see that colored on the chart, and that volume stays consistent while this market is kind of trading down. And as that market hits that significant value, it tests this point, and it doesn't have enough to trade through this size. The size turned out to be legitimate size, and we had a bounce as a result. Is one way to read the data on this chart. Another way, and I mentioned the ability to identify potential automated trading system behaviors and things like that. This gets tricky to do. You definitely, there are some ways to use the data. But you can see here, I've put a bunch of arrows on this chart where we've got below price action, where as you see, and again, it might be helpful if I described that let's say the more opaque the colors are, and I've got two options on colors here. You can colorize these and parameterize what color and brightness you like on this depth map. But basically, the hotter or higher the depth, the more opaque the value is. And so you can see here that we've got a kind of static opaque value that is just kind of shadowing below where the last price action is being traded. And if I took a screenshot a little tighter, I wanted to take a screenshot a little wider out so you can actually see the repetition here, but you can see it's just always there. And what you'll see is that this order size actually goes away before it downticks. And so you can kind of see it just kind of shadowing the market there. And it's just kind of always there. As the market moves down, it moves down. That could be a way of seeing an automated trading system. And something you might want to know is there if that's important to your trading style. So the market depth map, again, just is historical plotted data of where the market depth was. So let's pull up the NinjaTrader samples. So here I've been recording a depth map, and again, the depth map only runs on live data. And I've been recording a depth map for, I'd say, the last hour or so. And I've got multiple depth maps here. Let me switch to my first depth map. And so here I've got a 1 second chart. So I've got granularity of 1 second data. And I can pull this depth map back. And what you'll see is that the weighting of what's hottest will change depending on what's visible in the range. And so as I pull this chart back, you'll notice that this is 1358. This is when the market was closing today for the ES. And so we had significant depth size all around the close, which you generally would expect. And as I now include this in the date range for the chart, you can see all the depth here is all minuscule in comparison to the depth that occurred at the close. And you would expect that. So if you want to zoom into a particular area, you take your scaling, and as you zoom in, you'll see you can kind of get more and more granularity into the chart to see what's going on. And what you're looking for here is each level is defined. We've got 10 rows of market depth on the ES right now from the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And so we'll count up to 10 rows on each side of the bid and offer. And we're plotting that on the chart based on how much volume was at that price level. So if I look at this particular area here, you can see that there was quite a bit of volume at this price point. And what you can do is, as you zoom in, and there's multiple options. Let's pop over, right click into indicators here. Take a look at, we've got a way to specify a volume range. Right now I'm using 80 and 25. So we've got options here to kind of take outliers of huge extreme market depth. Maybe you don't want that cluttering up your display. You can take those outliers out. You can also change an opacity distribution, for example. So let's say if I wanted to make sure that something was more visible, I want to make something more brighter, I can turn that up, or I can turn it down here. So this is the way to kind of change the brightness of the display, which you may have to configure. Once you have this configured for your type of market, you'll pretty much have it locked in. And we've got color for bid depth, color for ask depth, and we've got a bid and ask line option here. And so let me move over to my next example here, and let's see what we got here. All right. So what we're seeing here is if I right click and go to indicators on this depth map, we've got the option extend last known volume checked. And what that's done now is as this market action has sold off here, as market goes down, the number of the visibility of the depth goes down with it. And so we actually only have true data 10 rows above the offer. And all the data up here is continued from the last known price earlier. So it just gives you a way to keep an historical value moving forward in case you believed that that value might still be relevant to you in the future. You know, if somebody was wanting to use this point here in the future as a potential area they're willing to apply selling pressure to, this might be a resistance level to you. And in this case, if the market action comes up again, you may want to be reminded of that. So you have the ability to turn that on or off. In the next display here, I'm actually doing a combo of things here. I've actually turned off the candles. I've put on the bid and ask lines, which is just an option in the indicator. And you may see some circles on this chart here as well. And these circles are what's called the trade detector. And the trade detector is in my next slide, the next set of tools in our order suite. The trade detector is an indicator which plots some circles on the chart anytime a specific trade condition occurs. And we've got 3 modes on this trade detector indicator. The first mode is called consistent bid ask. We've got price, and we've got block mode. And oftentimes it's better for me to explain this as I bring it up. So let's go ahead and pull it up, and I'm going to pause for a second to get a quick drink of water. All right. Okay, so I'm going to scroll this chart back here and get out of the closing portion of the day, since we've got typically a lot of volume at the end of the day. And so here's the ES chart for today. And I've got the trade detector applied in a bid-ask mode. And what it's doing is we're taking measurements at a specific price area. So a bid and an ask is at a specific price. As long as that bid and ask stays at that specific price, and we have trading continuing to occur at that level, so think of it as a battle ongoing between a bid and an offer to see whether we're going to go up or down. As that battle occurs, if a significant price occurs at that between those bid and ask prices, we'll go ahead and plot that as a dot on the chart. And what defines whether a lot of trades occurred? If I double click here, I've got a bunch of properties here. One is those 3 modes that I'm talking about, and we'll explain. The next is the minimum volume for marker, which is here. And so I've got this set to 500. So when I see over 500 trades occur at a specific bid-ask price point, at a consistent bid-ask price point, I want to see a circle. And so if I close this out, here we're getting a circle every time that condition occurs. And the circle is shaded based on how much of that volume occurred on the bid or occurred at the ask. So if I move my mouse onto the circle here, you can see I've got sell volume of 969 here and buy volume of 200 in this particular event. And we've marked that event with the circle and plotted it on the chart. And so where this is significantly used, it's typically used in combination with the depth map, although you don't have to. And it just brings attention to significant price points that you define as significant. And you may have to customize this minimum volume size based on your threshold or what instrument you're trading and what is considered significant to you. You can kind of get it, you can, as this number goes higher, the number of dots you'll see on a chart obviously go down. And the other thing you might notice is that these circles are all different sizes. And so what we do is we scale the circle size based on the min and max scene volume within the screen range. There's an option for this. You can set it up to where you can kind of do this, the circle scaling based on the session or based on what's visible in the screen range. And in the screen range mode, it just, anything circles that's bigger means that there was a lot more volume. So on this circle, we've had a total volume size of somewhere around 1100. And if I go down to this circle, which is roughly half its size, you can see we're at about 600 volume. So it could be used as a way to just signify some important levels that you might want to pay attention to. It's a little bit of a combination between a volumetric chart, and that gets into the next mode, which I'll talk about here, which if I switch over to the next tab here, which is, here's our per price volumetric mode. And so let me scroll back here to that same area here. And what we can see with the per price mode is the difference between per price trade detection and consistent bid-ask trade detection is that with a consistent bid-ask, we've got to see that volume occur while a bid-ask is at a specific price and it has not moved away. If it moves away and moves back, we start the count over again. With per price, we just count it per price. We don't really care if it occurred during the same event or not. And we'll do that based on bar by bar. And it is a way to kind of simulate a little bit of the volumetric data in here. And you're kind of focusing in on important areas of where you've seen high volume occurring at a price level. And if you see high volume occurring beyond your threshold, you'll get a circle. And well, then any of those circles that occur, we'll scale them based on which one of those are more significant than the other circles. So that is the per price mode. And then finally, we've also done a block mode here, where how block mode works is what we're doing here is this works very similar to the time and sales, where we've got the block mode there. Pardon. Where in the time and sales window, we've got the block mode, which allows us to, any trade over size, just big trades. As soon as we see that big trade, we'll plot a circle here. And so it's just block mode. Similar to any of you that have used block mode on the time and sales window. Now you've just got it plotted on your chart. You can see a history of when those things have occurred in the past. So if you're a time and sales user and are using the block mode on that, this gets you historical block mode basically. So definitely a cool indicator. Okay, so that is our trade detector indicator. Anything else we missed here in my notes? Let's take a quick look. Nope. All right, very good. So next thing I want to run through is we've added 2 additional indicators as well. We've went ahead and added a cumulative delta indicator and a VWAP indicator. Let's go ahead and pull up the cumulative delta chart here. Kind of move this around here so we can see it in real time here. So the cumulative delta is seen here on the bottom here, and we've got 2 of them applied. We've got 2 modes on cumulative delta, and let me first explain the concept behind cumulative delta. Idea here simply being at the start of the day or session, however you want to define it, we start counting up the trades that occur on the offer or on the bid. And then we accumulate that into the next bar, and we keep adding it up bar by bar by bar to see overall what is the overall cumulative delta trend on the day. And we can do that in this mode here. If I make it bigger here, you can see that you can see here's our 0 level line here. So at the beginning of the day, cumulative delta was more negative. It did transition into positive here, stayed positive for a while, and then kind of started to fall off. And so we've implemented this as an on-render indicator. So it does have, it looks a lot like a bar type here, where it has a open, high, low, and close visible, but it is not a data series. It is an indicator. And we've implemented this way since it's important to see the change. So like here, for example, we've we've got a really high cumulative delta on this bar that receded back down, and that could be significant and something you would want to visualize. We've had another mode on this guy, which is the bar mode. And the bar mode is simply it just levels it out on the zero mode here, and it's just kind of bar by bar delta. So each bar has its own delta, and instead of adding them up bar by bar, we just throw it on the chart, and so you can see the overall effect of the delta as the day goes on. So just another way to look at the data. Okay. And then we've also added the VWAP, which is the volume weighted average price. Now, in the product, we have had a VWAP column in the market analyzer. That was a column populated with data directly from the provider. Not a lot of data supported that, unfortunately. What we've done now is we've added an indicator in which will calculate the VWAP. We've added two modes to this. One of the challenges with getting VWAP right sometimes is that you need to actually calculate it on decent amount on tick by tick data. And so we have the ability to have a tick by tick mode on this VWAP, and we can calculate it bar by bar. So if I double click on this VWAP here, you can see that we've got the resolution where we can do standard, minute, or tick. You can actually set the start and end time of this VWAP, which is sometimes important. Maybe you want to restart a VWAP during the midday session. You can actually add two VWAP indicators on your chart then, have one from the start of the day and one in the middle of the day, for example, after lunch. You can do that. Standard deviation bands, that's the blue area in the background. So let me close out of this. So you can see the VWAP line here is this red and green line here, where we're simply coloring it red when price action is below the VWAP and green when price action is above the VWAP. And these dotted blue lines in the shading background behind is the standard deviations of the VWAP. And so we've added the standard deviation since we've definitely seen a lot of times where the standard deviations of a VWAP tend to be areas that act as support or resistance or can be considered as support or resistance points. And so it's definitely a popular way of utilizing the VWAP. So we've included it in the VWAP indicator. And it's all customizable. So if you want 3 levels, you can. If you want just 1 level, you can do that too. So that is the VWAP indicator. That's actually one of a common indicator that we've been wanting to add for a while, and glad to get it in with Orderflow Plus. All right, so that is a quick overview of some of the new Orderflow Plus tools coming in NinjaTrader 8. This webinar, hopefully you guys have enjoyed me ripping through some of the new feature set that we've been working on. The next thing that I am excited to show off and will be coming up in our next release is our volume proof profile tool set. We're actually working on implementing that in 2 ways, as an indicator and as a drawing tool. The idea being with the indicator, you can set up your composite volume profiles, your bar by bar profiles, and those kind of repetitive profiles, or even session by session profiles. And then you can also have a drawing tool where you can define a start and end time for a volume profile. Unfortunately, we are right in the middle of development on that guy, so I don't have anything to show you today, but we will have something here in the near future there to complete out our Orderflow Plus tool suite. So we will open up the room to a little QA session. I hope that you guys have some questions and can throw my way. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay.
And yeah.
Let's see. You listed the brokers. There's a question about whether IB is in that list.
IB, off the top of my head, I believe they don't even support tick data by default. So I think that's a no on IB.
Okay. Will this be available for Forex pairs?
Forex pairs is something interesting we haven't yet looked into. We'll do some testing. All the ideas, could be utilized on Forex pairs. although we haven't done any testing to make sure that the ideology still applies to Forex trading. So definitely an interesting use case. I know something like the depth map, for example, that won't work on Forex in general, since with any of our Forex providers and Forex providers in general, they don't send level 2 data out, since it's just the nature of the Forex market. It's a distributed market, so there is no real book of data. Forex, that's a good question. We may have to dial something in there if the volumetric tool set needs some special settings for Forex, something that we would be looking for feedback on as well.
Okay. Can we reference the values within the bar using NinjaScript? Therefore, can I write a script that lets me process that volume data on each side of the volumetric bars?
Super glad that question got asked, since that was one of my bullet points on one of these slides, but I think I skipped over it, which is we've added these as NinjaScript types in the volumetric bars. So that way you can either run this right on the volumetric bars or add in a secondary volumetric bar series into your NinjaScript, and you'll have access to all these base data constructs to work with. So the answer is yes.
Okay, perfect. Is it possible to use this with P and F charts?
T and F charts?
P and F.
Oh, P and F charts. Actually, I've never tried. In principle, it's just a periodicity. And since it's a periodicity, you can use it with, and again, we probably need to be specific what tool we're talking about here on that question. Is there any context on whether or not he's talking about the volumetric bars or any of the other tool sets?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it might vary. Volumetric bars, you can use it as a periodicity, but then obviously the rendering is going to be the volumetric bar rendering. It's not going to be the point and figure rendering. If it's any of the other indicators, then the answer is yes, since you can use it in combination with anything else. These indicators are implemented to where it doesn't matter what the bar types are.
Okay. Can we add I think this might be similar to the other one, but can we add a series within an indicator or strategy script that uses this type of bar, e.g. similar to add minute 15?
Yes, we will have that. So it'll be something like an add volumetric bar. Don't quote me on the name, but you'll be able to add this data series in and then use it as a secondary series and access all the data.
Okay, perfect. Do these bars stay in the history where you can always look back and see the numbers in the bars, or do they lose data after shutting the charts down?
On the volumetric bar, on all the indicators except for depth map, it's all available in history. And we build it in history using one-tick data. So if your provider, however far back your provider supports tick data, is how far back you'll be able to set up these charts. The depth map, which is this guy here, the depth map is the only one. There's no providers today that I'm aware of. If there might be some offshoot that maybe supports it that I don't know off the top of my head. But in general, any provider doesn't support historical market depth data. So those indicators only run in real time.
Okay, perfect. Are the volumetric bar values reported in the data windows?
No, they're not, because they're all available right on the screen. So if I pop over to the volumetric bar, so you can see all the levels and all the text and all the data are all in the bar on the chart here. And if you want to see the metadata available to it, add in the bar statistics indicator, and then all the data is available on the bottom of the chart. So we actually put it all in real time on the chart. There's nothing extra to view inside the data box window.
Okay. Can imbalance values be displayed as a percentage?
The balance values, we do support that on the bar statistics side on the bottom. So you can see we've got a delta percentage here. We don't have anything as far as percentages inside the bar itself. And if that's what the person is asking about, that's actually an interesting idea. and something that we're definitely open to feedback and changing or adding some feature sets on this guy. We're definitely open to being more open on this feature set and making sure we're meeting the needs of our user base. So if it turns out that we need to add a percent mode inside the bar, that would be something I'd be heavily interested in hearing feedback on.
Okay. Can the volume imbalance number be dynamic and change programmatically, or is it just a static number?
I'm not sure what the question is asking, since the volume imbalance number. Yeah, I guess I'm not sure what the person's asking, sorry. If the person's still there and can re-ask the question in another way, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see that. Okay. What is the time frame for the release of this suite?
So we've got preview coming out near the end of this month, and then that preview will be not having the complete suite. We'll be missing the volume profile and volume profile indicator. I'm sorry, drawing tool. Those will come in the next release. I don't have a set date on the next release, other than I've been kind of targeting monthly release cycles as we have things to release with an NinjaTrader 8 product. You know, I think last release we actually spent, you know, a little longer than a month, since we just didn't have as many bugs to fix in that month. So we just keep adding things, you know, and we just have a natural release cycle. So as soon as the volumetric bars are ready, the volume profile is ready, we'll do a next release with that tool set plus any community-driven feedback that we want to integrate in. We'll include that in that next release. We'll probably do a short beta during that time just to make sure we're solid, but at that point it could be considered released.
Okay. Is it limited to lifetime users only, or will demo users be able to use the suite and the sneak peek?
Yeah, good question. So for now, what we've done is we've limited it to the lifetime licenses. As far as the simulation license, that's something we haven't yet decided on, but we're working on that, and we'll have that figured out before we do a launch.
Okay. There's a couple of questions on if you can change the chart to 30 minutes on the delta, so we can have a look.
Oh, for sure. Let's see. So volumetric, 30-minute. So here's a 30-minute volumetric chart.
Okay. There was one I'm trying to find. Can we see the VWAP on the DOM?
VWAP on the DOM, yes, you can. So the DOM supports adding indicators to the DOM. The VWAP is just a standard indicator plot, so you'll be able to add the VWAP to the DOM.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I moved to see if that guy was going to type, and I lost my one spot. To use the depth map in a automated trading strategy, wouldn't you need something other than color to indicate the level? If so, would something other than color be needed? I guess I don't quite understand how it could be used in an automated system.
Yeah, so on the automated trading side, a few things that make it nice is we'll do the delta analysis, we'll throw the numbers together, we'll do all the tick aggregating per bar. All that will be wrapped up into a class. I'm not sure off the top of my head what we call it. And as far as, so all that will be kind of done automatically. Sure, you could have done it all manually by hand in an indicator, but it kind of gives you a leg up on getting all the numbers you see on the screen right into your strategy. Now, what do you do with the numbers? That's a good question. And there's what we've done and done with the display on the chart is we've colored significant values by shading them based on their session. how relative or how big that number is based on how much volume had occurred in these bars in the current session. That's just one way to do it. Maybe there's other ways to do an analysis. I don't know of any off the top of my head for quick rapid fire, but as you have the base data, you can do a comparison. Four bar every 4 ticks, do I see every price level going down? Do I see a higher or more significant offer value? Maybe I see that as a potential signal or something I would want to know. Then I can use that in my strategy. So you just get access to all the base data to where you can apply whatever analysis technique you want to use.
Okay, perfect. Let's see what time it is. Okay, let me try to find a closing question. Is there going to be an additional cost for the suite?
So as far as additional cost, what we are doing is we're including this in the lifetime license. So if you want to use the Orderflow Plus suite, you'll need to purchase a lifetime license to use the product. What we have not yet decided on is if this will be accessible in a trial mode or on sim licenses. We haven't decided that yet, and that's something we're working on, and we'll hope to have an answer soon.
Okay. Thank you for the webinar today, the information, and for spending some time with us this afternoon.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Just happy to kind of rip through some of the new stuff we've been working on with you guys. Hope you saw some value in it. Look forward to the community's feedback on the tools we've been developing, and I'm excited to get it out there and for you guys to take a look at it.
Absolutely. If you have any further questions, you can go to the Ask Me Anything thread on futures.io. And I believe we're scheduling another AMA with Brett in a month or two. So join us for that one. All right, guys, everyone, take it easy.